SpaceX and Tesla. You would be hard-pressed to find two companies that are more popular today. And yet in the not-too-distant past, both companies were basically unknown and were in fact simultaneously on the verge of bankruptcy. Today, we'll discuss how Elon Musk did what no other CEO had ever done before. He created and then rescued two companies at the same time and brought them both to multi-billion-dollar valuations. Let's go back in time where it all started. In the early 2000s, Elon Musk achieved what any entrepreneur would dream of achieving. He successfully sold his company for over $1 billion.
Here comes the money!
Here we go!
For which he received $175.8 million.
Yeah, boy.
This is where most people would call it quits. But for Elon, this was just the beginning. In 2001, Musk became involved with the nonprofit Mars Society and discussed funding plans to place a growth chamber for plants on Mars. He wanted to change the world for the better, and one of his ideas was to send a greenhouse to Mars in order to boost public interest in space exploration and hopefully increase NASA's budget. The idea was outlandishly ambitious, especially because Elon wanted to spend no more than $20 million on it. Now at the time, sending just 500 pounds to orbit could easily cost upwards of $30 million. But Elon had a plan. In October of the same year, he traveled to Moscow with Jim Cantrell and Didio Resi to buy refurbished intercontinental ballistic missiles that could send the greenhouse payloads into space. He met with the companies NPO, Labuchkin and Kosmotras, but the lowest price the Russians gave him was $8 million apiece, about 50% above his budget for the rocket itself. Musk was seen as a novice, and the group returned to the United States empty-handed. On the way back from Moscow, Elon did some back-of-the-napkin calculations. He figured out that the raw materials used in the making of a rocket were only about 3% of the final sales price. Instantly, Elon knew what he had to do. If he wanted to send anything to Mars, he'd have to build himself a vertically integrated rocket company. To that end, he read several books on rocketry from the Cold War. And in June 2002, he incorporated Space Exploration Technologies, or SpaceX for short. He then set about recruiting the right people who could make his vision a reality. His ideal candidate was young, single, educated, and ready to give up their social life for SpaceX. Elon's recruitment strategy was very straightforward. He basically co-opted anyone fitting that profile, from fresh aerospace graduates to the rising stars in Boeing and Lockheed Martin. At first, people thought Elon was making pranks, but within a year he had assembled some of the brightest engineers in America. Together they will design almost everything for SpaceX, from the engines and rocket bodies to even the smallest details like the circuitry. In many cases, the engineers could build stronger and more lightweight components at just a fraction of the regular price. These components would be used to build the Merlin engine, which in turn would power Elon's first rocket, the Falcon 1. Development was far from smooth, of course, but progress was being made. In February 2004, Musk participated in the funding round of a new electric car company called Tesla. He personally invested a little over $6 million and in return became the chairman of the company's board. Right off the bat, Elon began applying his experience from SpaceX at Tesla. The company's logo, for example, was created by the same people that made the logo for SpaceX. And of course, Elon was quick to use the same aggressive hiring strategy he used to assemble the SpaceX team. Musk took an active role within the company and oversaw Roadster product design but was not deeply involved in day-to-day business operations. Back at SpaceX, engineers were clocking in 60-hour work weeks while Elon was promising very ambitious timeline. In fact, his original estimate was to launch the Falcon 1 in November 2003, just 18 months after the company was founded. Of course, that estimate got pushed back and the Falcon 1 wouldn't lift off until March 2006, when it spent a total of 41 seconds in the air before crashing down violently. Like for SpaceX, 2006 was a big year for Tesla. In July, the Tesla Roadster made its first official appearance and recorded 100 pre-orders in its first day. But like with the Falcon 1, the actual production wasn't going very well. Tesla's CEO at the time was Martin Eberhard, and like Elon, he was promising unrealistic time frames. At first, the idea was to deliver the Roadster in early 2007, but an escalating series of production issues pushed the release date farther and farther away. In the end, Martin's mismanagement of the Roadster project got him ousted from the company he had founded, leaving Elon in charge of everything. With full responsibility for both companies, the stress was starting to pile up. Elon witnessed the second failure of the Falcon 1 rocket, and at Tesla, he struggled to fix the mess left behind Eberhard. In fact, the Roadster's production would not begin until March 2008. But then things got worse. In August, Elon launched his third Falcon 1, which never made it to orbit, and then just 1 month later, his wife publicly announced their divorce. Both of Elon's companies were struggling to make a viable product and were running out of money fast. In fact, by late October, Tesla had only $9 million left to fund the entire company. He had already spent $70 million on Tesla and $100 million on SpaceX. With what little he had left, Elon had to choose whether to fund and secure the future of one company or to risk everything and gamble on saving both. Fate gave Elon little time to think. The fourth, and potentially final, flight of the Falcon 1 was approaching. In September 2008, Elon got ready for his last chance to survive. He stood in the SpaceX Control Center in LA and waited in silence.
3, 2, 1, 0.
We're in stage
And
one.
we're flying.
Indication. We have liftoff. Plus 12.
Pitch kick.
For more than 6 minutes during the ride to orbit. Here we see fairing separation.
Reset.
There goes the
Fairing
fairing.
separation confirmed.
We are getting very close to orbital velocity.
5,200 meters per second and an altitude of 328 kilometers.
We appear to have loss of signal. That is not necessarily a bad thing. We were expecting to lose signal sometime around here. It can be highly variable depending on the weather conditions at the time. So we, of course, want to see what happens for the next 60 seconds. We're about 60 seconds away from a nominal shutdown.
9 minutes, 30 seconds.
Second stage approaching the Seagull.
And that would be a nominal SECO.
It goes in confirmed.
Which means Falcon 1 has
Payload
made
separation
history as
confirmed.
the first privately developed launch vehicle to reach Earth orbit from the ground.
That was
SpaceX had finally delivered a working product. The Falcon 1 became the first privately developed rocket to go into orbit around Earth. But Elon wasn't in the clear just yet. A working product would mean nothing if the company behind it went bankrupt. In a frantic scramble, Elon had to figure out funding solutions for both his companies before the end of 2008. Elon was raising all the personal funds so that he could save Tesla. But getting investors on board doesn't happen overnight, and December was creeping in.
When we'd call people and say, hey, would you like to invest? They'd be angry that we just called. It's like, no, it's not only no, and various expletives.
Days before Christmas, it seemed as if only Tesla was going to make it. But then on December 23, Elon received a very unexpected call.
NASA called and told us that we'd won a $1.5 billion contract. And I couldn't even hold the phone. It's like, I just blurted out, I love you guys.
They saved you.
Yeah, they did.
Financially and maybe even emotionally.
I'll tell you what, that was definitely helpful.
Then on Christmas Eve, the Tesla deal went through with sales of about 2,500 vehicles. Elon had successfully saved both companies from bankruptcy.
I suppose there were some tough times in 2008, end of 2008. How did you get through that period of crisis?
Yeah. Can we just break for a second?
Sure, yeah, of course. Yeah. You want to wait a little while?
Yeah, sure hope it was worth it. Sure hope it was worth it.
2008 was brutal. 2008 we had the third consecutive failure of the Falcon rocket for SpaceX. Tesla almost went bankrupt. We closed our financing round 6 p.m. Christmas Eve 2008. It was the last hour of the last day that it was possible. We would have gone bankrupt 2 days after Christmas otherwise. And I got divorced. That was like rough, man. Living in scar tissue there.
Well, it poses a question, or maybe you just answered the question of why is no one else doing these things?
What's your pain threshold? Well, if it's real high.
Elon told his team to make the Starship more pointy.
You literally told them to make the Starship more pointy because of the movie Dictator.
Yep.
It is too round on the top. It needs to be pointy. Round is not scary. Pointy is scary. This will put a smile on the faces of the enemy.
And they know it too. It's not like they they're unaware of it. Everyone thought it would be funny if we made the rocket more pointy, so we did.
Did it have any effect on the aerodynamics?
No.
Nothing.
No, we can make it way blunter and be fine.
But is it better to be pointier? Or like if it wasn't for the movie?
It's arguably slightly worse.
In 2018, SpaceX launched the Falcon Heavy. The inaugural mission carried Musk's personal Tesla Roadster as a dummy payload.
Most space organizations, government or commercial, have set their sights too low. They've really built relatively small rockets. And Falcon Heavy is the first time that there's something that's arguably even in the super heavy class, or somewhere between heavy and super heavy. 5 million pounds of thrust is really crazy amount of power. More than twice as much payload as any other rocket in the world. It can launch things direct to Pluto. No stop needed.
Hotels in the area are completely sold out.
Yeah.
Parking lots are packed.
It's like the first time something exciting has happened in rocket launch in a very long time.
Falcon Heavy is configured for flight.
T-minus 15, standby for terminal count.
SpaceX Falcon Heavy, go for launch.
10, 9,
All systems command
8,
green. Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Side boosters, decoy.
A lot.